All right, Village Square. There have been so many eye-opening moments, so many moments where my perspective shifts in huge ways. And some of those are funny because I'm laughing at myself. I can very much laugh at myself on the regular. I would say, let's see, one would be having kind of regular conflict dialogue with my husband over things for just years, and then learning something at work, and then being at home with him and sitting on the couch with him and going, oh, I've got to eat a little crow here.
All right.
You know, it's funny for me because we can laugh about that, and we so need that laughter rather than the heat.
Right.
You know, we can bring up the heat easily. And I think that's, you know, that's part of it. That's kind of our dynamic. We're both strong-willed people. We're hopefully raising strong-willed kids.
Absolutely.
And I think it's good for them to kind of see that dialogue, but they also have to see the humor and the love in that. So those are my favorite moments when I come home and just tell him, you're not going to believe what dawned on me today because of what I'm doing at work. And you know, and he's like, I've been trying to say that. I can't hear it from him the same way that
that's the way it happens. Always happens that way.
Conversations with Nicole. Conversations with Nicole. Let's talk about it. Tell me all about it. I'm here. I wanna know what's on your mind. Ooh, the world needs to hear from you, and I'm so glad to have a conversation to reach the nation. And it's all about you. We'll help each other to discover innovative ways to positively change the world. Let's talk about, let's talk about, let's talk about conversations with Nicole.
I guess.
Well, I am excited to have you here with me, Vanessa Rowse, the Executive Director of the Village Square. But also, you started your own podcast some time ago that I have been intrigued with and enjoyed listening to. So tell me how you got started on that road with the podcast.
Thank you. Well, so I love our community. I love Tallahassee. And I was kind of feeling like we had some things to look into. And ironically, you know, it had to do with our divisions, but I wasn't able to name it very well. So I just said, you know, I want to have some conversations kind of similar to what you do. And I'm so impressed with your show and with your growth and with all that you do. I can't even believe it, Nicole. Just how much you cover, how much you're out there at everything.
Thank you.
But so I was kind of wanting to dive into that and to get to know people and areas of our community that I wasn't aware of and have some conversations. And so really, in hindsight, a lot of it was about bridging divides, but I didn't realize that, you know? And then the other aspect was I just wanted a place to kind of explore some of the wonderful things about our community. I was born and raised here. I love Tallahassee for like a zillion reasons, and then that narrative about, you know, there's nothing to do here, I'm going to go to college and get out. And I'm thinking, well, are you looking in the right place? Are you connecting with the right people? And so part of the other goal with the podcast was just to kind of share some of those lovely things about our community so people can get out. I'm a huge believer in connecting in person with people. And so I don't love the way that things are trending in our society with just being, we're more isolated, we're more online. And so I want to get people out to have a conversation, you know, talk about things and see things and connect with people. I think that's what we need the most.
Now, you were Leadership Tallahassee class 35, I think?
33, yeah.
33, okay.
Yeah,
and so did you start the podcast around that time?
It was maybe a couple years after.
Okay.
Yeah, I had just left a job. I was trying to figure out what do I want to do now. You know, I kind of had a reset and was fortunate to have the opportunity to take a minute and just think about that. So started my podcast as taught myself how to do it and started it as a hobby and was kind of gearing up for that to be the main thing. And then the Village Square came along, and it scratched the itch that I was looking for without really being able to name it.
Gotcha.
So.
Now, what impact did LT have on you?
Oh man, just opening my eyes to a lot of different things in our community that I didn't know about or didn't know the depth of, and then different people, relationships, and also awareness about my own self, you know. I think it's really easy just to move through life, and you know, I'm an achiever. I'm an achiever, and so every job that I have, I'm just like heads down trying to work towards whatever goal that is.
Get her done.
Yeah. And so that having those moments to like settle and go, who am I, and what's going to be the best path for me, you know? I think that was one of those main moments where I started asking those questions and saying, you know, maybe I need to kind of shift things to work on something that's better for me and better where my impact can be used in a better way.
Okay, nice. Now tell me about the Village Square journey, because you produced the Village Square podcast for a little bit, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I started the podcast for them. So the Village Square was started 16 years ago with the mission of bridging divides. We talk about politics, race, and religion in a civil way with diverse groups. So it's very important for us to bring in people who don't look or think alike and hear various perspectives and have a civil conversation. Our goal isn't to change minds, it's to disagree and still keep talking, but also learn things along the way.
Which is one of the things that I love about the Village Square. To disagree and still keep talking.
Right,
like,
exactly.
We don't have to be calling each other names or threatening to, you know, do some physical harm to one another. We just don't agree. And it's okay.
Absolutely. And we usually find that we agree more than we think. So in our super divided environment, the extremes are controlling the narratives and making it sound like everybody's way out here. And when you start to talk, you realize, well, we're all most people are in a more gray, crisscrossy area. And depending on what issue, you might be at a different place on the line, you know? So having those conversations is where you uncover all that.
Absolutely.
So let's see, I started working for them in a very small capacity, doing some membership work while I was doing my podcast as my main thing. And then the pandemic hit, and the Village Square, the whole model is based on bringing large groups of people together to share a meal. We always break bread together.
Right.
And so that was not going to work during COVID. And so we were like, well, what are we now during this time? And thankfully, they had recorded a decade's worth of programs that, unfortunate, the downside is those programs only became more relevant, you know, as our divisions grew. So, you know, somebody would be talking about something 5 years ago and they look like an amazing genius because now they've predicted the future, and where we are, the content was so relevant. So anyway,
what are some of the topics that maybe were discussed back then that are still relevant?
Oh, free speech is a huge one. We've covered free speech twice.
Okay.
And I think we need to do it again because with all the, you know, think about all the complications with social media, and do you kick somebody off the platform? Do you not? And we believe for, you know, our democracy that free speech is important, but of course it requires some guardrails and it requires some conversation. It's not as easy as just saying, sure, we should have free speech, you know?
Right.
And so that's what our programs do, is it lets us get a little bit deeper into that and go, well, how are we gonna manage this in our complicated world, you know?
Right.
So yeah, free speech, cancel culture. We do a lot on race, and that actually, we realized we needed to have a place to discuss race in the community. So, you know, to work on, we consider it sort of like a gym analogy, a muscle that needs to be flexed. If we don't have a space and the opportunity to start these conversations, then when we're hit with tragedies, we don't even know what to do, and we go into our divided corners.
Right.
So coming together and already having so much of what we do is based on relationships. So already having that foundation of relationships and trust allows us to say the difficult things and then talk through that.
Absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
this is it's a heart issue for me, and I find myself in conversations with people who maybe haven't, you know, aren't on the journey as where I am. You know, I know I got a long way to go still, so I'm not saying I've accomplished it, but I'm just,
Right.
I'm trying and I'm constantly learning. But when I talk with people who maybe haven't dug into that so much, you know, I hear all the time, I don't see color, and I'm like, we've solved that kind of thing. And then because we're talking about it, I have the opportunity to say, well, have you considered this? And part of being in this work gives me the courage and the words and the tools to kind of navigate that. It's such a it's touchy for everybody.
It is.
But we got to figure out how to talk through it.
It is. So you talked about the courage to, just because of this work, you know, so you think about folks outside of this work that are trying to take that on.
Right.
It can be a little intimidating, a little scary. You know, I've had some of my white LT classmates and their spouses that have tried to maybe speak up as it relates to racial inequity, and they have been in social media or something like that, and they've been kind of shut down or looked upon like, you know, we were just joking, so it's no big deal to, you know, have these kind of off color jokes or things that are said. And so, you know, it's sticky, it's tricky, you know, because, you know, where do you draw the line on some things?
Right.
And, you know, you want to be able to have an open, honest dialogue and communication, but also be respectful.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we find things can just go off the rails so quickly when you're talking on social media, because you're amped up and ready to go at, you know, we're not sitting together and seeing each other as human and there's something that happens when you're in person, and when you,
Yes, it is.
you know, you're motivated at a different level to make things go okay.
Indeed, and that energy is different. Look, behind that keyboard, you might say some things that you will not say while you're sitting right in front of my face.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah,
and then you're emboldened. Somebody online is gonna prop you up and agree with what you're saying, and so those voices will come out, and you think, oh, look, I'm right. I can just keep on going.
Right, I'm not alone.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
So we're all about, you know, let's get together and have actual conversations in whatever way, and certainly that can happen virtually, but having, you know, building on relationships and having civil conversations, trying to understand each other. So, I'm sorry, I will do this. I'll get off on tangents all the time. So
No,
you
you're good.
asked about how we started the podcast. So
Yes.
the pandemic hit. I was working a little bit for them on membership, and they had all these programs recorded. And so, you know, I said, hey, what if we put this out on a podcast, and that's how we can still connect with our members and our listeners during this time when we're all separated.
Right.
And what that did, I had no idea, but it was the best project for me personally
Okay.
that I needed. I sat at home during the pandemic and listened to like 60 of these programs, and it changed me in ways I was not prepared for. I didn't realize was coming. I had no idea that I needed to change, you know? I was you know, most of us are living somewhat siloed, you know, and the range obviously is broad. Some people super siloed and never come into contact with anybody who thinks differently, and then, you know, the whole range. I did not realize how siloed I was. I grew up in one of the most liberal neighborhoods in Tallahassee. My kids go to one of the most liberal schools that there is. And to me, it was just this is just my community. This is just normal, you know?
Right.
And so being part of the Village Square helped me recognize other perspectives and see where I was tuned in to only one little segment. And I joke that it probably saved my marriage, because my husband and I we come from very different backgrounds. we're both pretty moderate now, and he kind of came to the middle. And for me, I needed the Village Square to help me come to the middle. Like I told you earlier, I can't really, I hate to admit that right here on your show, but
it's okay.
I've told him before, he won't be surprised. He'll be at home laughing, so there's a funny moment.
Exactly, my buddy Scott, love him. So some of my favorite programming for Village Square is The Longest Table, which is where folks come together from all over the community to share a meal and conversation.
Yes.
And so that I think is very rich, because I think just the sharing of a meal in and of itself, which is how Conversations with Nicole got started, is there's something very spiritual about that. You know, because now you're, you know, sitting here doing something that is helping to sustain your life with someone, and, you know, sharing this very rich experience and having a conversation. And so I love that. I love that. That's one of the things I love. I've also participated in Created Equal, which I think is also a really unique experience where, you know, you definitely Village Square puts something on at the, I've been to the moon.
Yes.
And it's been race relations. You know, I think the last one was around the last one that I attended was around the bus boycott, I believe. It's not the bus boycott.
Elections. Last year was elections, and
yeah, I think it was the one before that. But anyway, at any rate, they had you actually had some of the folks that participated in like the sit-ins at the lunch counter and that sort of thing, and it was really, really cool to just hear from them.
Yes.
You know, at this stage in age, and so. I think we just need more of that, you know, from a historical perspective, like understanding like where we've come from and what we want our future to be. Because, you know, that saying about history, right? And if you don't know history, you possibly repeat it. But if we know it, and maybe we can do better, right? As a result of being now informed.
Yes, absolutely.
Better informed,
yes.
Yeah.
That I think I remember the program you're talking about, and I loved it so much too. It had to do with desegregation in our community, and it was just so remarkable to realize how recent that is. Like you said, they had some of the people there who were. It was that lunch counter sit-in, and it was an anniversary of that.
Yes.
And so to have people on stage, and it really makes you realize how recent all of this is, and so that helps us combat that narrative that, oh, we're done with that. You know, it's, oh, you know, we've moved on. Look at all the progress we've made. Why is this an issue anymore and all that? But then you're like, well, think about how the things that shape you in your own family, those, you know, one of my other kind of eye-opening areas has to do with veterans issues. And I think about families who had a family member who was treated really terribly during the Vietnam War. You know, think about how the children from that are impacted, and how that can shape how they feel about different things today. And so by the same token, when you realize these families, what they have endured, and how recent it is, and you know, just the complicated feelings all around, it's very powerful, and helps us talk about it.
Now, have you been afraid to go in some rooms and talk around the Village Square, and, you know, just based on who was in the room and what maybe your thoughts or perspectives about who they were?
I haven't so much been afraid. I feel like it's giving me more courage to be able to talk. So there are probably things I'm sure there are things that I was afraid to tackle before, and I'm not unafraid. You know, like there are definitely topics that I feel more comfortable talking with one-on-one or in a very small group. I think cancel culture is very real, and if you're going against a common narrative, then it can be taken out of context, and you know, you can real damage can happen, and I think that's sad, but it's a reality. And so sometimes I do feel cautious about speaking in a way where I'm not going to have that personal relationship with the person, where they're not going to be able to ask me, hey, can you clarify this? You said this thing that kind of bothered me. What did you mean by that, or whatever? But if I'm sitting down, we're doing book clubs now, and I really do not feel afraid to speak in a book club. Those people are going to hold me accountable. If I say something that they're like, really, is that you? They're going to ask me, and we're going to be able to go deeper on that. And the same with you. We talked about some heavy stuff during lunch, and I'm not afraid of that. I'll tell you, I was in a situation last weekend with a travel sports team that I'm on with my daughter, and the parents were all out to eat, and somebody made a statement about how we were all there at the table, like ideologically the same. It wasn't worded that way, but and I was like, gosh, I can't be silent. I just have to say something. And I did, and I'm proud of myself for saying that. And it opened up conversations. I ended up having all these different one-off conversations with the parents, and realizing, one of our Village Square terms is crisscrossy. We realized how we're all most of us are crisscrossy. And so we had these moments where we connected on different things, and we could talk, just explore things that we didn't line up on. But I'm not sure that a few years ago I would have had the courage to say, not me. I'm not all the way over there. I just kind of probably would have felt really uncomfortable, and so I'm practicing. I'm learning. I'm trying to get better.
So I see that as like choosing your battles, right?
Yes.
So do you care enough about the people that you are, whose presence you're in, to have that type of conversation?
Right. Absolutely. And I think that we all do need to do that, because there's places we can move the needle. There's people that we can impact and want to hear and learn and curious, and then there's some that just you're not going to. I say that on the heels of one of our recent programs was Daryl Davis. Are you familiar with him? Jazz musician. Oh my gosh, he's amazing. And so, for anybody who doesn't know about him, he's a black man jazz musician who is responsible for bringing like 200 people out of the Klan. So he made friends with Klan members, and because his big question was, how can you hate me if you don't even know me? And so when they exited the Klan, they give their robe to him, and so he's got a collection of like 200. So there's an example where he didn't shy away from the most extreme, and he really had an impact. So I'm not there, and I actually would be scared to recommend anything like that. It feels very, very dangerous.
Yes.
But so I'm on the pick your battles situation. But here's an example. I just think it's one of the most remarkable things.
Like I'm feeling like Lion Denny with that. Like you are just jumping in the lion's den for them to just devour you.
Right.
Wow, that is amazing.
It is. And to talk about the things that are present during his program, he was showing pictures of him at these Klan rallies, and I mean, I'm just thinking, this is happening, this is happening now.
Right.
And it's so easy for us to go, no, that doesn't exist because I don't see it, and we've made so much progress. This really doesn't happen. Well, it does.
So how do you fight that? Do you find yourself, like, especially now in the position that you're in, like leaning in more, doing more research, or trying to, gain a better understanding?
Right.
Outside of your silo?
Right, definitely. Yeah. Well, on the topic of race, I definitely feel like I need to continue learning because I don't have the personal experience of being black or any other race other than my own. And so I need to continue learning personally, but then also where I feel that I can be effective is, people are going to say things to me that they're not going to say to you. And so I might be in those conversations, and that's where I can push and say, hey, have you heard about this? I mean, have you thought about it from this perspective? But it's a definite, a lot of times these are inside of complicated relationships. So you constantly have to be going, where can I push? How much can I say? What do I need to say for next time?
Yeah. So how does that translate to you for family? So I'm sure you have kind of changed or become a bit more self-aware in this role, and now maybe your parents or your siblings or other family members that, you know, keep their ideologies or what have you, and now you've changed your perspective. How does that, how do you work?
Yeah,
how do you work all of that?
It is. It's challenging sometimes. I just keep being me. You know, it's so interesting, this whole group mentality. So a lot of what we talk about and learn is about why we humans are the way that we are. And then, all right, so now what? So like, how are we gonna turn that into something positive, right? But so one of the things is how and why we're so groupish. You know, we're wired to be because of our survival, right? You know, you think about way back when we needed to physically, you know, not get eaten or killed by war or whatever, that us being part of a group is what helps us survive, right? And so we are so concerned with getting kicked out of the group. And so that, and I would say in the early stages of me kind of seeing some changes in my own self, I definitely had those feelings like, oh my goodness, my group's gonna kick me out. Like, I'm the only one, you know, kind of pushing the envelope. Like, what about this or what about that? Or I don't line up with you on that thing, you know? And I think I'm trying to let that go. One of the things that has helped is that I have different groups around me now, you know? I've diversified all my circles. And so I'm not going to get kicked out of all the groups, you know? I've got some of my favorite groups are the Village Square groups, where people they want to be there because they don't agree with everything that I say or that you say or whatever. And so I'm like, you know what? I'll have a home there. It'll be fine.
Nice. So I'm glad you said that, because it makes me think about the term about finding your tribe, right? And so we may have several tribes that we're a part of, but how can we bring those tribes together or do we bring those tribes together, or maybe not? Maybe we just kind of finesse our way through the various tribes that we're a part of. So yeah.
I think that we can. Yeah, it was back to a created equal. It might have been that one that we were both at a couple years ago. They did this 5-foot challenge, and they actually gave everybody a 5-foot measuring tape. And the point was that we can all change the 5 feet around us. All the people, you know, that's where we can attempt or consider to make changes depending on, you know, who's around us and where do we want to focus. But I think the point was, you know, it can be very overwhelming to think, how do I solve this issue in all of divided America? And if we take it down to, you know, that phrase about the saying about the elephant, you know, eat it one bite at a time. Well, I'm going to work on these 5 feet around me. And so I think figuring out where to do that, how to do that.
I think, of course, the most important thing is to start with yourself first. Yes.
That's brilliant. That is so important. It's in our with our divided narratives, our divided country, we all think the other side's the problem. We think they've gone absolutely crazy and they're the ones destroying America, and so they need to change. Right? And so that is the most brilliant point, is that we have to look at our own selves and go, where am I doing that too?
Absolutely. Now, what about the youth? How important is it for them to start with conversations and trying to, you know, they're learning, right from wrong, good and bad, positive, negative, all of these things, right? And so are there any Village Square youth groups or
right now no, but we've talked about that a lot. And actually in the past, yes, there was a teen square for a while. And so they would bring a group together of high school students and do some Village Square programs for the teens. I definitely have a desire to look into that. You know, there's so much we want to accomplish, and so it just comes down to, we're a small nonprofit, and we have a very big mission, and we put on huge programs, so we're very busy. But talk about a heart issue, that is for sure a heart issue for me, because, you know, number one, they are the future. Number two, they are the way that we're modeling for our children now, and the way that we're basically they're less equipped to go into the world and be able to handle differences, right? And so partly because we're siloed, partly because we're less often modeling that, you know, we're just kind of sticking with our people. And so they are going out and not able to handle that conflict, or not handling it in productive ways. So I'm just going to cancel you rather than listening to you. And then where do you get? And then the damage that is done between two parties disagreeing on things is worse than not having said anything at all, because now, you know, the wedge is bigger.
Indeed.
So I do think that it's critically important for us to give our kids the tools, you know, first of all, model what we want for the future.
Exactly.
And give them the tools to be able to carry that on.
Indeed, indeed. So just really quick, tell me just some of your top programs that you have. I know Village Square has a lot of them, but we've talked a little bit about Longest Table. We talked a little bit about Created Equal. Some of the other programs that you have to offer.
We have our Dinner at the Square programs, our evening programs where we talk about the hot political topics of the day, and we try to have a diverse panel. That's critical to our model, actually. So people come and they can hear different perspectives. We'll bring in thought leaders from across the nation, people that are involved in bridging work. So those happen 2 or 3 times a year, and that's our biggest event. Well, sorry, Created Equal is very big too. We got a lot of bigger events, but that's one of them. So we also have God Squad, which I love, love, love. It's a place where people can bring their faith into these political conversations. The panel is different faith leaders across our community, and again, they're diverse as well. And so we'll put out a question to them that, you know, we did one on cancel culture. We've covered abortion. You name it. The God Squad can handle it. And so that's a great lunchtime, hour-long program where you can just pop in, and it's really wonderful. I've gotten so much out of that. Local Color is another one that so wonderful. It has not come back since the pandemic, but hey, we're bringing it back for next season, the 2023-24 season, and your listeners might be the first to know that. We're making plans right now. I actually texted my partner Leon last night and said, this is a go, right? Because I'm about to tell Nicole tomorrow. Right. Because that's one that we think it's critically important to our mission, but also it was the one program that didn't come back during COVID because it's the one program that is not recorded.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And it doesn't work really virtually because of how sensitive it is. It really requires people. We build on the relationships. We work from like a core model and expand out. And you come together in person. It's like what's said at Local Color stays at Local Color. It's really important for us to establish a safe place so that people can share what's on their mind. Otherwise, where are we getting anywhere, you know? So anyway, that's why it was on hiatus during COVID, but it's coming back.
Okay, good deal.
Yeah. You may have been there. I didn't even go because I wasn't involved yet.
So yes, I have gone to a Local Color. I think the one that I went to, and it was a small group, but the conversation was around whether or not to tear down Confederate statues or keep them.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Such a great conversation.
Yeah, it was. All right, wrapping up. Final question. What do you believe is your greater work?
My greater work? Oh, man. What I like to think of myself as, often when I look at myself, I look at my relationships, who I am to other people, you know? So being a mother to my children is my number one. And a wife, a sister, a daughter, a friend. And so to me, I guess I've hopefully landed on the perfect job for me because it's about relationships and bridging. And so whatever it is in life, I want to come together with people to connect and talk, and I'm an open book. I'll tell you more than you want to know. So I think that's what I'm here for.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you for taking a few moments out of your day today to talk to me. I really appreciate it, and all of us with the Village Square and all that you do.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for what you do. I'm so impressed with you, Nicole. You're
My
just
pleasure.
making things happen every corner of our community and beyond. Thank you, thank you.
My pleasure, my pleasure. And thank you all for tuning in to Conversations with Nicole, where we are connecting the community through conversations.